If your goal is to buy a home in 2026, this probably resonates. Buying a home feels overwhelming because there's so many micro steps, but in reality, if you think about it, there's only 3 phases. When you know what each phase requires, the process becomes much more manageable, less stressful. I believe clarity creates confidence, and confidence drives better decisions. I've helped over 500 families buy homes, and I've personally bought and renovated more than 15 units, so I've seen everything under the sun. So here's the game plan. I'm gonna be breaking down the entire home buying process by chunking up and breaking out the process into 3 phases. And I'm gonna explain what actually matters the most in each one. So I call these 3 phases the A-OK, because if you understand them, the process feels a lot more okay. So A-OK stands for approve, offer, and keys. And with each phase, there's a different goal, different decisions, and different mistakes to avoid. So that's probably the big one. And that's why I call my company Learn Lending, because we want to learn from our mistakes. And again, you do not need to know everything at once. What's the saying? You know, how do you eat an elephant? Not that anyone eats an elephant anyways, but you want to do one bite at a time. Just like that, we want to apply that to home buying. So you just want to focus on what phase you're in, and you want to focus on the task at hand. Okay, phase number 1 is approve. So within the approve phase, you'll get clear on these parts right here. So we want to be clear on the paperwork, the numbers that we're going to be clear about, and then the game plan. Okay, so for paperwork, this is what you're going to provide to the mortgage person. Okay, you'll provide important documents like photo ID, bank statements, pay stubs, employment info, also the mortgage questionnaire. And I always say this, right? It's almost like baking a cake. You need 2 things. You need the ingredients and the recipe. You need the recipe of how long you cook the ingredients for. You need the eggs, you need the brownie flour, all that good stuff, right? You need both to make sure that it's a great cake. And remember, the main goal of this section, right, the documents, is to verify you can afford the loan. Okay, so meaning if you want to buy a $10 million house, some crazy example, right? Everyone wants to aspire to get that $10 million house or an awesome house, right? But we have to verify that we can actually afford it. So that's what the mortgage person is there for. And in this section too, right, the documents, that's where you can provide some of the information to your real estate agent as well. It may not be documents in like a physical format, but what are the needs and wants, things like that. That's in this section. Okay, so this is the numbers section. This is where you're gonna decide what you want for your monthly payment, and among other things. So when it comes to monthly payment, that's where we want to focus on different thresholds, right? So I use the cost framework. So COST. C is cheap. Meaning if you saw this monthly payment, you'd be like, yeah, this is a scam for sure. O is opportunity, meaning if I can get my payment right here, this would be amazing, an opportunity, right? S is gonna be your stretch, meaning I can do that payment. It might be on the top end of my budget, but you know, maybe my income will increase next year or rates will go down, etc. So it's like running, right? Where you run at threshold, where it's doable for a little bit, but not forever. And then T is too much. Don't waste your time here. Too much money, too much purchase price. Let's not look there. Ideally, the best place to be at is that O and S range, and that opportunity and stretch range or something in between, right? So the other thing you're gonna decide, again, that was monthly payment, right? Now we're gonna talk about down payment. What are you comfortable with using for the down payment for the house, while also being mindful of how much money do you have left over for moving expenses, life in general, emergencies? Because a lot of people don't know this. There's 5 things in your payment, right? There's gonna be principal, interest, property taxes or taxes, insurance. HOA is maybe, but then there's gonna be maintenance, right? My rule of thumb is 1% of the purchase price divided by 12. So if you're buying $100,000 house, that's $1,000 divided by 12. And now you can scale that up to, you know, whatever purchase price you're looking at. Even if you don't have that 1%, by the way, little pro tip, at closing and you're like, hey, I'm on the stretch range and I don't have that saved up, that's totally okay. What I would say is over the next 2 years, start planning and saving for that, because maybe by that point your income has increased. Now you can allocate a little bit for that maintenance. Okay, so boiling it down, the goal here for this section is to get clear on your numbers, because what that basically does is a forcing function and it creates a target, right? If you have a target, you can create a plan, just like a GPS. If you have a destination, you can have the GPS find the route for you, right? But you have to have that target first. And I feel like a lot of people get this wrong and they're gonna be like going on this route. They wanna go on this route without having the destination. So the GPS is gonna be like, I don't know where you're going. So I'm just gonna say you're gonna keep going here, 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 and you don't get there efficiently. Where if you have that target, you just spend like a little bit of time, not too much, create that target. Last for this phase, for the approve phase, is the game plan. This is how you're gonna win, okay? So you're gonna figure out the best loan options like conventional FHA, VA, or jumbo. I just named off a lot of different flavors of ice cream or flavors of loans. And then you're also gonna find your rate and your refinance strategy, right? And then also like, what's your timeline? What are the must-haves and nice-to-haves when you're looking at homes? And you're gonna get super clear with that with your real estate agent, okay? What I just mentioned was, I said you're gonna get clear on these game plans, but if you have the right partner or advisor in the role, they should take some of that stuff off your shoulders. So if you don't know what the best rate and refinance strategy is, maybe you need a really good mortgage person. But if you're like, Nathan, I know everything about mortgages, I actually could take your job, Nathan, then you probably don't need someone as good, right? If you don't know the market that well, you may need a really good real estate agent or someone who's really good at negotiating. But if you're like, man, I've bought and sold so many homes, I could be a real estate agent at this point, you probably don't need a good real estate agent. So it's like one of these things that you can kind of almost use like a balloon, if that makes sense. Where are your strengths and weaknesses? And then you can kind of fill in the gaps there. That's literally the goal of having a team. And by the way, if you don't know where you personally stand right now, I've built a free home buyer readiness quiz. It's a link down below. It helps you figure out which phase you're in actually, gives you a grade, and based on how you answer, it gives you tailored advice to basically take that from a B to an A. Or if you're, I don't know about this part of the home buying process, or I don't know what I should do here, it gives you that tailored video from me on how to get, an A+ credit score. So click the link in the description down below. It's completely free, takes less than a minute. Okay, let's transition from phase 1, which is A, to phase 2, which is the offer phase. Within this phase, you'll create a tour of neighborhoods, a tour of homes, and then have an offer strategy. Now you might be wondering, wait a minute, you want me to not tour homes first? That's so weird. I thought I was gonna go look at homes first. This is where a lot of people make this mistake, is that you wanna actually tour neighborhoods first, not homes. And here's the logic. You can fundamentally change everything about the house, literally, but you cannot change the location of the house. It's the most important thing, in my opinion, at least from the things that I've learned in my career and personal experiences, is you wanna make sure the neighborhood passes the neighborhood vibe check, okay? You're buying the location first, house is second. And again, because you're watching this video, you're not gonna make the same mistakes, because I'm telling you, please don't do this. Then, once you tour the neighborhoods, you know the locations you want, right? And you've down selected the areas. It's like, hey, I wanna be in this part of the county, or this part of the city, or even this part close to the ocean, right? And you've got that down. Now let's move on to tour of homes, okay? So this is where you get a feel for like what homes are out there, like what they actually look inside, right? So you're gonna be inside. And this is what I recommend first, is when you go tour the homes, right? This is where you wanna first get a feel. Does it pass like the vibe check of the house, first and foremost? Do you like the layout? Do you like the space? How does it feel, right? This is kind of like the life that doesn't live on paper. And then if you feel good about the home, that's where you do the second pass, where you do big ticket items, like how old's the roof? What about the HVAC? What about the foundation? Mr. or Mrs. Real Estate Agent, can you please let me know that, right? So the reason why I structured it this way, because I used to do everything, like when you try to do everything all at once, but then you like waste all this time for, like, if it doesn't pass the vibe check and you don't even like it, does it even matter about the big ticket items? It doesn't even matter, right? Just cross it off the list. So I use the vibe check as the first filter. You wanna make sure you like the layout, the vibe, the neighborhood first, right? And the feel of the house, the layout, etc. And then you can move to the big ticket items. And then another pro tip here is when you're checking the vibe of the house, right? And you want it before you go into the big ticket items and you tour it with your real estate agent, right? Your real estate agent might not be available 24/7. If they're available 24/7, might not be a good real estate agent, okay? Little pro tip. So you might want to check it during the day. And then guess what? Also, on your free time, drive the neighborhood at night, because I want you to see the neighborhood in the morning, afternoon, and nighttime, right? How does it feel to drive from work to your house, right? And vice versa. Do a little dry run. If that passes, great. Probably a really good plan to put an offer in, right? Now that's something that I would recommend doing kind of on the free time or on the side, like little side quests, if you really like the house, right? Then you do the big ticket items, etc. Now, once we've done that, now let's move to offer strategy, meaning you're very serious. Like, hey, I see myself in this house. I think this is the one. So what is your offer strategy? Like, do you need to close fast so you can get the seller credits, or maybe you need to be competitive without being the highest price? Here's the truth. A lot of home buyers get this wrong because they think like their realtor and their lender are completely separate islands and they're like separate parties. If you have that right now, you're definitely losing out on maximizing your potential. Like, what's the saying? If you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together, right? That's literally the same exact thing. You want to apply the concepts of sports teams, etc., right, to the team that you build for your house. If your realtor is telling you something and then you are having to translate to your mortgage person, and then your mortgage person has to translate to you, and then you have to, as a first-time home buyer, don't even know all this stuff, have to translate into a foreign language to the real estate agent, that is a symptom of a bad team. So I'm just telling you that from experience, because so I bought properties in states I'm not licensed in, or I don't know a real estate agent because we're embarking on this new real estate market because it has great returns or whatever. I guess having context of what a really good real estate agent, great lender is, and you go into a different market and a different team, like you can immediately tell. It's like, oh my God, there's so much friction. And I just feel bad for someone who just doesn't have like a litmus test of like who's good and who's great. And they just think, okay, well, this person is here and their bar is just like, they don't have a bar, right? So I can promise you, like, they're supposed to make your life easier. If they're not making your life easier, you definitely have a who problem, okay? So that's something that you may want to self-reflect on, okay? Not to throw anyone under the bus, but like that's definitely not the way it should be. So I did mention a little earlier, right? How to write a competitive offer without having to be the highest, right? You might be wondering, well, whoa, Nathan, I quit. I have to be the highest though to win, right? Not necessarily. I want you to read the study, okay? So Redfin found that in bidding wars, all cash buyers were 334% more likely to win. Now, as you can imagine, and you think about it, why do sellers care about cash? It's not the actual cash they care about, because at the end of the day, for anyone who's bought and sold before, you get the wire, like 100 grand hits your bank account, 500, whatever it is, right? Hits your bank account. You don't really care if it's cash from the buyer or seller. Not actually cold hard cash, by the way. They're not dropping out money, but like the escrow company wires the money to you. However the escrow company gets it, you still get the wire, right? So you really don't care about cash. What people care about, the sellers, is they care about certainty. So that's the key. You want to copy certainty. And how do you copy certainty? It's by having a simple offer and speed. Cash usually closes is like in 10 days. And it's simple. Hey, here's a cash offer. We don't have to deal with the lender. We don't have to deal with this, etc., right? So we want to mimic and copy what certainty looks like. So first, we have to understand, how do you actually win an offer? So if you boil it down, there's the winning offer formula, is something that I've developed, okay? Now, winning offer equals price plus convenience divided by speed. Now, what do all those mean? If you buy your home and then you're going to sell it, at some point you're going to be a seller. So it's actually important for you to know both sides of the equation. If you're the seller, guess what? You want the highest price, right? And you want the most convenient. You want the money tomorrow. If you're the buyer, you want, guess what? The lowest price, the most convenient to you, and you want to buy it on your timeline. Maybe you want your lease to expire, no problem, have the movers move in, take their time, move in after the holidays, and then you can take your sweet time. But the seller's like, wait, I need my money now because I got to go do something, right? So now that we understand what the goal is for being a buyer and a seller, let's talk about each section of the formula. Price. It's obvious the highest is the best, but only in a vacuum. But this is real life, so we have to add other variables, right? So let me give you an example. There's two offers. $800,000, shaky. The listing agent, the one representing the sellers, calls the real estate agent. They don't communicate, doesn't pick up. They call the lender, say, hey, I want to make sure the pre-approval is rock solid. The lender never calls back. It's one of those big banks that don't call back. And they're like, I don't trust this offer is going to go through because I have no idea. Is this buyer actually really qualified, or is this a fake pre-qualification letter, pre-approval letter, right? Then there's a very clean $790,000 offer where the real estate agent communicates, the lender actually communicates, you have very strong financials because the finance team can actually communicate that to the listing agent, because the listing agent's worried if they accept an offer and the deal falls through, they have to go back on the market. That's like the biggest fear, right? Next is convenience. Convenience means how easy are you to deal with? Is the real estate agent easy to get a hold of? Is the mortgage person easy to get a hold of? Because like, think about it this way. Like if you're trying to date somebody, right? And then you're like, hey, you're impossible to get a hold of. That's definitely not convenient, right? Or like you get, like the only time they reply back is like at, 2 in the morning, like you up. Like, is that really convenient? That's not convenient at all, right? You want the more convenient offer. You want the more convenient person to deal with, right? That applies to mortgage, real estate, life, and employer, right? Like imagine if you have a manager, right? And your manager, you're like, hey, I need your help to actually grow into my position, and they're impossible to get a hold of. That's not convenient, right? You might accept another employment job where you work with somebody and they're really easy to work with, things like that. So you want to go for convenience. And the other side of the variable for convenience is what's less convenient is if you want the sellers to cover all your closing costs, that's technically not as convenient as a buyer who's going to ask for no seller credits or coupons to cover their closing costs, right? So that actually leads me to the last equation, because you're like, Nathan, I want the best deal possible, but like, how do I do that if I'm going to lowball them? So what do? We want to offer speed. So speed, which is the other side of the equation, or the bottom side of the equation, is how fast can you close and how fast can you remove uncertainty? Remember, because cash is certain. So how do we mimic that as much as possible is we have to remove your contingencies, which I'm going to go over in a moment. But please understand, speed wins because it reduces the seller's fear of, will this deal fall apart? So here's 3 ways you can improve speed. It's the pre-approval quality. Do you have a fully underwritten pre-approval or a strong pre-approval, right? Or is it just like a pre-qualification where you like input some stuff? If you input some stuff and you get a letter right away immediately, do you think someone was able to actually verify all the details correctly? Probably not. So if it's a pre-qual or a weak pre-approval, auto-generated pre-approval versus a manually in-depth pre-approval, the stronger one is always going to win. The other thing that you want to think about is the pre-approval letter, and here's like the test, right? Is the pre-approval letter, does the quality look legit? If you get a pre-approval letter and it looks like it's from a Word document, that's like a representation of that mortgage person's brand. The other thing is, because then the listing agent or the seller is going to see it and like, this doesn't even look real. And then you have a more professional one, like who's going to win, right? If all other things are the same. The other thing is the mortgage team, do they have their systems dialed in? And does the real estate agent have their systems dialed in? And if you sense they're doing everything live, probably, not a good sign that they're have a strong pre-approval, right? Like if you call them and they're like always on vacation or always in their car, how are they actually working in their car, right? So that's something to note, right? Because the listing agent will also sniff that out. It's like, hey, it was impossible to get hold of. Once I got hold of him twice, they were like not by their computer and not actually working. Like what's going on here? The other thing is you can shorten your contingencies, right, for speed. So contingencies are like your little parachute, right, to protect your deposit. So if you want to back out, if you have your parachutes, you could back out, right? You're going to use these parachutes to due diligence, right? So when you get your offer accepted, you want to make sure the house is safe. You're going to get an inspection. You want to make sure the value's there, all that stuff. So the longer it is, the better it is for you, but the worse it is for the sellers. So here's the little trick is what we have to do is front load a lot of the work in the beginning. So that way you can cut down like a 21-day contingency down to 15 or even 14 days. So just imagine you're 21 days on edge, whether or not the buyer is going to move forward, right? That seems more scary. But if you have a buyer that's going to tell you in 14 days or even 10 days that you're moving forward, you're going to probably look into that offer a little bit more. So that's one of those things where you can use speed in your advantage and not have to be the highest price. The next thing is fast closing for speed, right? Meaning you close really fast and the sellers get their money. Most lenders, take about 30 days or so to close. The national average as of recording this is 42 days to close. So if you can work with a lending team that can close fast, let's call it 21 days is good, but let's do 15 days, 14 days, 10 days. If you can get closer to there, right, and you can close fast, that will definitely win offers. So remember the winning offer formula. This is a writer downer. Price plus convenience divided by speed. As long as you can solve for each part of that equation, and if you don't want to pay the highest price, you will have convenience and speed as the two knobs that you can turn to make sure you get the best deal. Because remember, you want to use certainty to your advantage. Now that's phase 2. You might be wondering, okay, well, we used the winning offer formula and it was so good we got the offer accepted. What do I do now? Now we work into phase 3, which is the keys. Go through your due diligence. And then we're gonna talk about the loan steps and house steps. So again, due diligence, loan steps, house steps. Due diligence, this is where you send your earnest money deposit. So it's like a security deposit to the sellers, and they take the property off the market while you make sure you're actually gonna move forward with the house, right? So you're gonna be completing your inspection. So let's go over that. Your inspection answers what condition is the home in. It's about 3 pillars: health, wellness, and safety. So those are the 3 things that you're gonna look at, like roof, plumbing, HVAC, foundation, structural red flags, right? Is there water damage, mold concerns, other safety issues? Is the balcony kind of like, leaning a little, tilted a little this way? Is there, termite damage, etc., right? One little pro tip is the home inspector is gonna be a generalist, and I always recommend, please spend the extra $200 to get a sewer scope line. Right? Pay the extra money, because that's like one big ticket item that you can't really see unless you pay for it. And of course, like the one time that I don't do it, like early in my investing career, like it was in California, and we didn't get the sewer scope line. And of course, like 6 months later, like we had to get, we had to fix that. Of course, the roots were all in there and all that good stuff. So spend the $200, it'll save you a $10,000 headache. Please heed my warning on that. And remember, the home inspector, I want to talk about who it protects. So the inspector mainly protects you, the buyer. It's going to help you decide to move forward, or if you want to renegotiate or completely walk away. So again, worth the money. Usually an inspection is like $400 to $600, right around there. So how is the inspector paid? So this is a key thing. The inspector is going to get paid up front because they're third party. And sometimes I say that and it kind of glazes over because, it's like third party. Yeah, that sounds good. But please understand, the reason why they're third party is they get paid no matter what. If they only got paid that you move forward with the house, guess what they're gonna tell you? House is crystal clean. And then you're gonna get in the house and there's all this mess in the walls and stuff like that. So that's why the payment structure is they get paid no matter what. The next part, we're transitioning to loan steps. So this is where the appraisal comes in. Like, what's the true market value? It's one thing for the realtors to say it's worth X dollar per month or X dollar, right? It's better when it's a third party appraiser, right? So let's go over what is an appraisal. That's gonna be something that checks the home value. The appraisal answers like, is my home worth what I'm paying? It's based on comps or comparable sales that the appraiser evaluates, and it's their opinion. The key distinction is it's not the realtor's opinion. And imagine if the opinion of the real estate agent selling the property was the gold standard, that was the price. They're gonna say the 400 square foot home is worth $1 billion, right? Right? So that's why it's important it's third party as well. So here's what can happen, because a lot of home buyers will be confused. Like, okay, well, if I get the appraisal, I know that there's a few different outcomes that could happen. If the value of the appraisal, you buy it at 500,000 and you put an offer at 500,000 and it's worth 500,000, you're good to go. Appraisal's good. If it comes in higher, let's say it comes in at 550 or something like that, you don't have to renegotiate the price. You got a great deal and you're walking in with extra equity right away. So if it comes in low, you're gonna renegotiate the price. That's one. You can bring the difference in cash. If it comes in at 490, bring in an extra 10 grand and cover the difference. Or 3, you can challenge or reconsider the value. Try to get that 490, if it came in at 490, up back to 500. The agents can supply other comps, comparable sales that the appraiser might not have used, okay? So those are 3 outcomes that can happen. If you renegotiate the price, you go from 500,000 and say, hey, came in low, I wanna buy it at 490,000. So that was the one that I skipped over. And then who does the appraiser protect? It's gonna be 2 parties. It protects you, right? Because you want to know the value before moving forward. And it also protects the lender and their part of their loan. And then how are they paid? They're just like the inspector. They get paid up front. The only exception is like for VA loans. But for all intents and purposes, the inspector and the appraiser is paid independent of the opinion, meaning they're going to give you the honest thoughts of the home, which is the better way to align the process. Instead of telling you what you want to hear, they tell you what you need to hear. Next is underwriting. All right, so this is where someone who approves the money to be sent does a deep dive on your whole entire loan package. So this is where they're super detailed compared to the pre-approval. And this person is gonna be completely different from that mortgage person that you're talking to. Think of that mortgage person you're talking to as like the liaison between you and the lender and the underwriter. The underwriter is the one who actually stamps and says, hey, they're good to go, send the money, right? That's gonna be a deep dive in your financials for the underwriter. All right, last is house steps. All right, we're moving and grooving. So this is where you do the final walkthrough. You might be feeling very excited because it's like, I just put in my 30-day notice, like it's really happening. But you wanna make sure the home condition is in the same state as what it was before. This reminds me of when back in, I think 21 or 22 or something like that, we had a home buyer who was buying a house in San Diego, and the sellers ended up partying like crazy, like 2-3 days before, because they're like, oh, we're selling the house, etc. Like, we're totally good. And the listing agent, I guess, didn't set the right expectations with the sellers. It was like, you need to not trash the property. So the whole property was trashed, right? And then the buyers walked in and they're like, whoa, with the buyer's agent. And they're like, what is going on here? This needs to be all cleaned up and stuff like that. So that's why you actually have the final walkthrough, to make sure, you know, you don't have somebody just partying like crazy, or they steal all your appliances, even though it's part of your contract, right? So that's why you want to do that. Next is you're going to also prepare your movers, cleaners, and locksmith. You want to get through all the other sections first, then you want to start doing this. You do not want to prepare your movers the day your offer is accepted, because there's so many things that could happen that could change the closing date that are not your fault, right? That's why I recommend only scheduling the movers later on into the process. And then lastly, the big step, right, is actually sending the rest of the money, right? Usually you put your security deposit or your earnest money deposit. This is where you send the rest of the money, your remainder or your cash to close, to the escrow title company saying, hey, I'm good to go, here's the money. And then at closing day, right, you're gonna get the special keys, and that's gonna be an amazing day. So I want you to remember this video. Give this video a like, by the way, so that way you can watch it back. But I promise you that's gonna be a great feeling when you get the keys. And then, you know, once you get moved in and stuff like that, the first day you like sleep in your bed and then you wake up and you're like, wow, this is mine. That's gonna be an amazing feeling. Like, I don't wanna rob you of that moment, so I'll just say it's a great moment. So I can't wait for you to experience that. It's gonna be a very special day. So I'm excited for you to get there whenever that happens. All right, so those are the 3 main phases that we talked about. A-OK, so just remember that acronym, A-OK, approve, offer, keys. And again, if you like this video, please like and subscribe. I try my best to make the best videos in the mortgage education space. And also YouTube is recommending this video right over here. Go check it out, and I'll catch you on the next one.